My father didn't ask for my college fund. He gave it away while I was sitting at the dinner table. "Your sister's pregnant," he said. "She gets the 94,000. My mother squeezed my hand and smiled. "Work builds character, Joy. You'll be fine." I should have exploded. Instead, I looked at both of them and said one word. "Okay." Then I stood up, hugged my mother, and walked upstairs like I had accepted everything. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed with a security alert from the account downstairs. Then my father screamed my name. He had just discovered what I'd done 5 weeks earlier. I was 32 when I finally understood why that dinner still lived in my body like a bruise. By then I worked as a financial investigator. I spent my days tracing missing money, reviewing payments, comparing bills, and asking the kind of questions people usually avoid when family is involved. But none of that started in an office. It started in the house where I grew up. From the outside, we looked normal. Sunday dinners, framed school pictures. My mother, Susan, always kept fresh flowers near the kitchen window. My father, Richard, sat at the head of the table like the seat had been assigned to him by law. And my older sister, Megan, was the person everyone seemed to orbit. Megan was 4 years older than me. She was not cruel when we were kids. She did not have to be. If she forgot homework, Mom drove it to school. If she quit something halfway through, Dad said she was overwhelmed. If she cried, the whole house adjusted. I learned a different lesson. When I was 8, I begged for an art class at the community center. I had saved the flyer under my pillow for 2 weeks. Mom finally looked at it and sighed. "We cannot afford every little thing, Joy." 3 days later, Megan started private lessons because Dad said she needed something to rebuild her confidence. I remember staring at the receipt on the counter and feeling embarrassed for ever asking. Grandma Eleanor noticed things like that. Her house smelled like cinnamon and furniture polish, and she always let me sit beside her while she baked. She never asked why I was not more like Megan. She asked what I liked, what I wanted, what kind of life I imagined for myself. Those questions felt almost dangerous because nobody else asked them. As we got older, the pattern became expensive. Megan left a college program after 1 year, and nearly $20,000 disappeared into fixing that mistake. Later, when I needed money for school materials, Mom told me to find a weekend job. "Struggle is good for you," she said. "It builds character." So I worked. Coffee shops, weekend shifts, late nights with my textbooks open beside cold leftovers. Meanwhile, Megan came home again, rent-free, after another plan fell apart. That was when I began to understand the rule in our family. Megan's problems were emergencies. Mine were lessons. Then Grandma Eleanor died and left me something my parents could not easily explain away. $94,000. At the time, I thought the money meant tuition, breathing room, and a promise no crisis could touch. I still believed Grandma's wishes would matter even after she was no longer there. She called it my future. My parents would eventually call it something else. College should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt like a test I was always taking while Megan got extra credit for showing up. I worked mornings at a coffee shop, evenings at a grocery store, and weekends helping at a small event venue. Most nights I came back to my dorm smelling like espresso and fryer oil, kicked off shoes that made my heels ache, and ate whatever was left in the fridge while reading until 2 in the morning. When I called home, Mom always sounded proud. "You're doing so well on your own." For years I heard that as praise. Then I realized it was permission. Permission not to help me. Permission to keep helping Megan. At 19, I started saving records. Nothing dramatic. Payments, bills, bank notices. Anything that made me stop and think. Wait, where did that money go? I did not know what I planned to do with any of it. I just needed proof that I was not imagining the pattern. A few weeks before my 21st birthday, I pulled out Grandma Eleanor's papers and read them carefully for the first time. Something caught my attention. The account was not supposed to remain under my parents' control forever. I called David Collins, the lawyer who had handled some of Grandma's affairs. He did not make promises. He reviewed the documents, explained the account terms, and told me what would change once I reached the required age. Most importantly, he told me one thing. If this money is meant for your future, make sure your information is current the moment you are legally allowed to manage it. So I did. After my birthday, I completed the required paperwork, changed the contact information to mine added security alerts, and confirmed that future account decisions came through me. I told nobody in my family. 5 weeks later, Mom called. "Come home Sunday. We need to talk." Her voice was too careful. I drove back that afternoon with a folder beside me and a knot under my ribs. Megan was already there. She sat on the couch with both hands around a mug she was not drinking from. Her face looked swollen from crying. Then I noticed the small curve beneath her sweater. She was pregnant. Her relationship had fallen apart. Mom hugged me too long at the door. Dad barely spoke until dinner. The roast chicken went cold while he pushed food around his plate. Finally, he folded his napkin, set it beside his plate, and looked at me. "Megan needs stability now." I waited. "She has a baby coming. You have options. You always have." Then he said it. "Your sister's pregnant. She gets the 94,000. For a second, I could hear nothing except the refrigerator humming behind me. Mom placed her hand over mine. "Work builds character, Joy." There it was, the sentence underneath my entire childhood. I looked at Megan. She stared at her plate. I looked at Mom, then Dad. "Okay," I said. Mom exhaled. I stood, walked around the table, and hugged her. She held me like she thought I had surrendered. I had not. I went upstairs, closed my bedroom door, and sat on the edge of the bed. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed. Security alert. Someone inside that house had just tried to access the account. I stared at the screen. Then another alert appeared. That was when I knew the dinner had never been a request, and whoever was downstairs had not even waited for me to finish pretending that I believed any of them anymore. I did not run downstairs. For the first time in my life, I stayed exactly where I was. I sat on the edge of my childhood bed with the phone in my hand, staring at the security alert while the old ceiling fan clicked above me. That room had barely changed. There was still a faint streak of blue paint near the closet from when I was 11. The small wooden shelf Grandma Eleanor gave me still leaned slightly to one side. For a second, I could see every version of myself that had sat in that room, trying to understand why being the responsible daughter always meant getting less. My phone buzzed again. Another attempted access. My fingers went cold. Downstairs, I heard a chair scrape across the floor. Then Dad's voice, low at first, then sharper. Mom answered him. Megan asked something I could not make out. That was the moment everything became clear. Dad was not planning to talk about the money again tomorrow. He was trying to move it now. Minutes after telling me the decision had already been made, I looked at the alert again. Access denied. Then another notification confirmed the account was still secure. I closed my eyes and took one slow breath. 5 weeks earlier, I had been terrified that protecting the account would make me look suspicious. Now I understood something I wish I had learned years earlier. People who benefit from your silence will always call your boundaries suspicious. Downstairs, I heard Dad hit the desk with his palm. Then silence. Then one more failed attempt. The old access was locked. "Joy." His voice ripped through the house. I flinched. Not because I thought he could take the money anymore, because some part of me was still 21 years old and trained to respond whenever my father used that tone. I stood and looked at myself in the mirror. My hands were shaking. That surprised me. I had imagined that courage would feel powerful. It did not. It felt like fear, with nowhere left to hide. I opened the drawer beside my bed and took out the folder I had brought from Boston. Grandma's papers, account confirmations, legal notes, old payment records, nothing dramatic, just enough truth to make pretending impossible. I walked toward the stairs. Dad was standing beside his laptop when I reached the bottom. His face was red. Mom looked pale. Megan stood near the kitchen doorway, one hand resting over her stomach. "What did you do?" Dad demanded. I kept my voice steady. "Were you trying to access the fund?" His jaw tightened. "That is not the point. It is the only point." He looked at Mom, then back at me. I was moving things along. There it was. Not asking, not borrowing, moving things along, like my future was furniture he could rearrange. I placed the folder on the table. For 21 years, I had been expected to understand everyone else. That night, they were finally going to understand me. Dad stared at the folder like it had insulted him. I opened it slowly. The $94,000 belongs to me. He gave a short laugh. "You are 21. Yes. That does not mean you suddenly understand how family finances work." I slid the account confirmation toward him. "It means the account is legally under my control." His expression changed. "Not much, just enough." Mom picked up the paper before he could. Her eyes moved across the page. Then she looked at me. "When did you do this 5 weeks ago?" Megan finally lifted her head. Dad leaned forward. "You knew we were going to need that money, no? I knew someday you might decide you were entitled to it." The room went quiet. He pointed toward the folder. "Then why did you sit there and say, 'Okay'?" I looked straight at him. "Because there was nothing left for you to decide." That hit him harder than yelling ever could have. His face tightened. "This is family money. No. It is money Grandma left for my future. Megan has a baby coming. I know. She needs help. I know. Then what exactly is wrong with you? Mom whispered his name, but I was already past the point where that question could hurt me. I looked at him. If you believed I would help willingly, why were you trying to get into the account without me? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Mom stepped in. Joy, nobody is trying to hurt you. You have always been capable. You always land on your feet. There it was again. The compliment that had cost me so much. I turned toward her. When I wanted art classes, Megan needed lessons more. Mom looked away. When I needed school supplies, I was told to work. That is not fair. When Megan left college, nearly $20,000 disappeared, and nobody asked me what I thought. Dad slapped his palm against the table. Enough. No. The word came out quieter than his. That made him stop. You keep calling me strong like you gave me something I said. You did not make me strong. You kept making me survive things Megan was never asked to survive. Megan flinched. I never asked them to do that. I looked at her. I know. Her shoulders dropped slightly. Then I added, but you never asked them to stop either. She went still. Dad pushed the papers back toward me. I will talk to someone about this. You may think you have everything figured out, but you do not. That is fine. He blinked. I opened the folder again. If you want legal advice, get it. I will do the same. And if this becomes the dispute, every payment, every withdrawal, every old account record gets reviewed. His eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? There are about $14,000 in older withdrawals I already documented. Mom sat down. Dad's face lost color. I did not accuse him of anything. I did not threaten him. I simply closed the folder. If you want everything reviewed, I am prepared for that. Nobody spoke. Mom finally looked at me with tears gathering in her eyes. Are you really choosing money over your family? I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because after all those years, she still could not hear herself. No, Mom. I am choosing not to let my family choose my future for me. I picked up my coat. Behind me, Megan spoke. What am I supposed to do now? I turned back. For the first time that night, she looked scared instead of embarrassed. You deserve help, I said. But help has to be given. It cannot be taken from somebody else. Dad stared at the table. Mom wiped her cheek. I walked to the front door. Nobody tried to stop me. When I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face so hard I could finally breathe. Then the door closed behind me. And for the first time in my life, my father was the one left standing in silence. I did not speak to my parents for months after that night. There was no dramatic lawsuit. No police at the door. No courtroom showdown. Just silence. David helped me review the account carefully and confirm that the $94,000 was still protected. We also organized the older payment records I had saved over the years. Once Dad understood that any formal dispute would mean opening the entire financial history for review, he stopped pushing. For once, consequences did what arguments never could. I used the money exactly the way Grandma Eleanor had intended. Tuition, professional training, a little breathing room, nothing flashy. I did not buy a car to prove a point. I did not take some expensive vacation and post pictures where my family could see them. That money had never been about winning. It was about finally having a future that nobody else could redirect. Over the next several years, I moved deeper into financial investigation. I found myself drawn to cases where money and family loyalty got tangled together. People who had signed things they did not understand. Parents whose savings slowly disappeared. Adult children pressured into covering debts because they were the responsible one. Every time someone sat across from me and whispered, I thought saying no would make me a bad daughter, I understood exactly what they meant. By 32, I had built a stable career and a life that felt like mine. Then one afternoon, Mom called. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. She asked if we could meet. I agreed to a quiet cafe. Dad was already there when I arrived. He looked older, not broken, just tired. Megan came later with her daughter Lily. Lily had Grandma Eleanor's eyes. That almost undid me. For a while, nobody knew what to say. Then Megan looked down at her coffee. Having her change something, she said, glancing at Lily, I keep thinking about what she would learn if everyone kept rescuing her from every mistake. I said nothing. Megan swallowed. I did not understand what they were doing to you. You benefited from it. I know. That was the first honest answer she had ever given me. Dad asked if we could leave the past behind. I looked at him. Moving forward is not the same as pretending it never happened. So I gave them boundaries. No money demands, no decisions made for me, no using guilt as a substitute for respect. Megan and I slowly rebuilt something for Lily's sake. With my parents' trust came slower. Some wounds should. Today a copy of Grandma Eleanor's papers hangs in my office, not because of the money, because she was the first person who ever treated my future like it was worth protecting. For years I thought strength meant carrying more than everyone else. Now I know better. Sometimes strength is finally putting down what was never yours to carry. Family love should never mean surrendering your future just to keep the peace. Hard work did build my character, but boundaries gave me my freedom. I learned that being the strong one does not mean you deserve less support, less respect, or less protection. Helping family should be a choice, not an obligation forced through guilt. If you have ever been expected to sacrifice simply because everyone knew you would survive it, share your story in the comments. And subscribe, because sometimes the hardest family battles are the ones nobody outside the house ever sees.